Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about our relationship with money. I'm delighted to welcome special guest Dennis Harhalakis from the UK. Dennis is a certified money coach. He helps people understand the way they think, feel, and behave around money. You can reach Dennis at his website, cambridgemoneycoaching.uk, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Dennis. I'm so glad you could join with me today.
Thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I am too, and I love your approach. I've talked to people who talk about how to get out of debt and people who how to save money or how to budget money. But the focus of how our relationship with money and what we think about money is not something that people are always even aware exists. When you say, what's your relationship with money, they think they don't have a foggy clue what that even means.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And if you'd asked me that like 5 years ago, I would have been in that camp as like, well, what is my relationship? What does it mean? And so the way I look at it is that there's this kind of, when you begin to understand it, there's three parts to it. There's how do I feel about myself? How do I feel about money? And how do I feel about money and myself? So if you think about this outside of money, but you think of it in terms of a relationship that you have with a partner, the quality of your relationship is how do I feel about myself as a human being? How do I feel about my partner or relationships? And how do I feel about them and me together? So money is that you have a relationship with money because it makes you feel things.
It does make you feel things. So let's start with that. For a lot of people, the very topic of money, the idea of money, talking about money, thinking about money, just fills them with anxiety and absolute stress. They just feel overwhelmed. It's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. Why is money so emotional? Why does it make us have so many negative emotions?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to preface that just by talking about kind of why is it that we find this whole topic so hard? Why is finance, managing money, why is it so hard? And I think that will give you some clues as to why it brings up so many emotions for us. So I think the first thing to remember is that our brains are not wired for managing money. It may sound obvious, but actually that's the reality of it. In fact, our brains evolved over time for a number of purposes, but none of them are about managing money or even thinking. Our brains evolved to manage our metabolic budget, which is like running the body budget, energy in, energy out, and to keep us safe. And in fact, the way that they do that is basically trying to keep us away from danger. So it's very much a reactive state. In other words, I need to stay away from danger right now. The only future that makes any sense is the one I'm alive to see. So what that means is that we are alive, reactive, and predictive to immediate danger. Long-term thinking doesn't matter. You need to stay alive right now. That is how your brain is wired. So in that sense, it's about as opposite to long-term planning and thinking about money and budgeting and managing all of your finances as possible. So it's not just that our brains are not wired for money, they're wired for the opposite, which is instant gratification and staying alive. Those are very, very powerful instincts because they are core survival instincts, and that's what keeps a species alive. The second thing to understand with money is that generally no one ever shows you how to manage it. All of my clients, I ask them, anyone ever show you how to do this stuff? And they all say no. Now you can say, well, that's why they ended up with a money coach. But I think if you ask most people, did your parents talk to you about money? Then the answer is no, they probably didn't. And in fact, it's not like there was an absence of guidance. There is a huge amount that they did and behaved around money that you've inherited as your subconscious inheritance. So parents at the one extreme or the worst extreme would go, we don't talk about money. It's rude, it's immoral, it's this, it's that. It's not a subject we talk about. So that sends very negative signals to an individual about money. So if we go back to how do I think about money and myself, and how do I think about myself? then how I think about money is I can't talk about it. How do I think about money and myself? If I'm thinking about it, there must be something wrong with me. Very, very negative messaging. Then there's a whole raft of subconscious messaging that we pick up in childhood, along with all of our other understandings around families, how parents talk to each other, how siblings talk to each other, how siblings interact with parents, how emotions are shared, what's safe, what's unsafe. And if you've grown up in an environment where money was a source of anxiety, where money was a source of shame, where money was a source of guilt or conflict, and let's not forget that most marriages involve conflict around money, then you as a child, especially if there's a divorce, will associate money with conflict. Or possibly if you have parents who disagree on spending versus saving, or just, in general around how to manage money, then there'll be conflict. So we come out of childhood with this, not a blank slate around money, we come out of childhood with a set of subconscious patterns and beliefs around money and around ourselves and money that influence us without us actually really understanding how that works. Next, we have a culture of silence around money. Yeah, we kind of talk about stuff, but we talk about how much things costs, but we don't talk about how money makes us feel. We don't talk about how we feel about money. Then we have this concept of financial literacy, which is, it's just about numbers. It's all about maths. What don't you understand? Money in, money out, simple, right? No, that's not simple. What that gives you as a message is if you can't manage your finances, there must be something wrong with you. So my clients have usually started off with, how do I do this money thing? Why is this money thing so hard? Why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you is nothing. No one's ever shown you how to do this. It's really hard. It's not intuitive. Your brain's not wired for it. And money has become a core survival need. So threats to money, our incomes, our future security, our jobs, maybe our pensions, our stock market investments, or whatever we have, or just, my day-to-day existence become a very, very strong core security threats. And when our core security is threatened, we react, usually quite aggressively. It's fight, flight, or freeze when your core security threats. So is it any wonder then that this whole thing around money is complex, emotional? And money's tied into our feelings of self-worth.
I was wondering when you were going to get to that, because that's another way that money, if we don't have it, then we're worthless, and we have to have it to prove our worth. There's a whole lot of issues that direction as well. But as you explain this, it gives kind of a feeling of peace and comfort that it's okay to not just automatically know what to do. There are real reasons why people don't know what to do, and how valuable it would be to have someone like you to walk through the process and to be able to explain, this is what you're feeling, this is where you've come from, and now this is where to go. So, Wow, thank you. Well, keep going. Teach us all of these things. I'm loving it.
Does that resonate with you?
Yes.
Because I think this is unless we have these conversations, then we're all trapped in our own feelings of guilt and shame and inadequacy and scarcity around this area, which is not anybody's fault. It's not your fault. You are enough. You are good enough, all of us. But it's a complex thing. No one's shown you how. And so the first thing you need to start with is self-compassion. No one showed you how to do this. If your brain is wired to do the opposite of what makes sense for kind of, saving and planning, then it's no surprise if it goes wrong. That's why we have to teach kids about delayed gratification. We have to teach them about saving, because it's not natural. We're hardwired for instant gratification. We evolved, our bodies evolved to eat, to find energy sources, rich energy sources like sugars and fats. They weren't lying around every time. We didn't have fridges, obviously, but the body evolved to go, oh, wait, a beehive or, honey or something. I'm going to eat all of that now, right? I'm not going to eat some of it and leave the rest for later. I'm going to eat all of it now. And my body is going to store the bits that I don't use. So we end up with this, with bodies that evolved to convert excess fat and energy sources into fat that we keep on us, right? We carry our own fridges on us, right? But we call them
our own fridges, our love handles, huh?
They call them love handles. That's right. And we wrestle with this, but actually, your body's designed. Your body evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to do this very thing. So, weight is not a question of calories in, calories out. It's so much, much, much deeper than that. And so have compassion for yourself around finances and recognize it's difficult. You're not wired to do it. No one showed you how to do it. And there's a lot of stuff out there about engaging with the financial system that's pretty scary. So when people, most people don't like to talk to financial advisors because, I don't know, I don't want to feel ignorant. I don't want to feel like I'm being ripped off. No one, it's that thing with where the person you're talking to knows far, far more about the subject than you do.
That can be intimidating.
So sometimes, if it's a doctor, it's great, great, thank you, doctor. In that circumstance, we don't mind it. But part of the thing with financial advisors is this feeling of inadequacy and this feeling of I may be ripped off, or I don't know whether, I should be able to do this stuff, but I don't, and it makes me scared. And then when people finally get round to kind of getting their financial affairs in order, it's usually as a result of some kind of event. Maybe, a worst case event would be a death or a divorce or some kind of, money event, or it could be inheritance, it could be a number of things. So then you have that conversation where the guy goes, well, if you told me this 5 years ago, we could have put something in place, but now we can't. So the whole experience of engaging with the financial system is scary for a lot of people. Engaging with their finances is scary. Engaging with the financial system is scary. But when you begin to understand that and you understand how to feel good about yourself and good about yourself and money, then you move to a position of power, as your guest, as Christian would say, or you move to a position of going, that's okay, I can do this. I can understand this.
And that feels good.
Sure.
I love your comments, so many things. My brain is trying to wrap around everything. Just that anxiety and thinking that everything is about numbers and math. And I can imagine people even feeling like, I hated math in school and I hate this and I hate that and I don't want to talk about this. But bringing in the emotional aspect and giving yourself that permission and that kindness and compassion with yourself, it gives an excellent starting point. So you can say, yeah, I can do this.
You have to, because if you don't start with forgiveness, self-compassion, you don't get agency. So it's really hard to believe you can make good choices if you blame yourself for everything you've done without understanding that how it got, it wasn't really you that got you there in the first place. So our culture likes to tell us we have agency, because that's wrapped up with our moral codes and religions and means we can punish people, right? You did this, you need to pay the price, right? And I'm totally okay with that. The problem is that it gives us guilt and shame about things that we think and do that are not the result of conscious cognitive processes. They're not the result of choices that we make. Nobody chooses to feel guilty about money. No one chooses to feel guilty or shame or anxiety anyway. These things just come up for us. So when you begin to understand that this was not a conscious choice of yours, you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you just because you can't manage your finances. You can go, okay, now I can begin the learning process and I'm not going to fall over when it goes wrong the first time. I can anticipate that it's going to, learning is not a linear process. I can anticipate that it's not going to go perfectly first time, and then I'm not going to blame myself for that and think, oh, I knew I could never do this. I was never any good with money. My dad was never good with money. We come from a family of gamblers, da 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 da. Right? That's just the story you tell yourself. You change that story by starting with self-compassion and understanding that you weren't designed to do this, and that's okay because it is hard, but with self-compassion and sharing this in a safe environment, people can guide you through it. The thing that gets me about this work is that we have coaches, we have guides for everything that we want. You want to get better at yoga, you do yoga. You want to get better at golf, you have a golf coach. You want to get better at driving, you have a driving coach. You want to be a better executive of a boss, you have a coach. And the one thing that we all need to understand in our lives is how to be reasonably good with money. Why don't we have coaches for that?
Apparently
why isn't that the thing they teach you? Yeah, that's right. But when I put it like that, doesn't it sound like really obvious?
It does. It sounds really obvious. You know, we have some things that we learn in school. We learn how to read. We learn how to write. We learn some basic math. But there are some things that our society, our culture, our whatever, we expect people to just pick up on from observing. And some of those things are like how to get along with other people, and those things of self-compassion, and things like money. That's another one that is just sort of, we're just supposed to magically absorb it and pick it up.
Sure.
By who we watch, by observing others. And like you said, in our families, sometimes that observation, it didn't turn out very well. And when we're supposed to not talk about it, man, how do you learn anything? I mean...
So let me ask you, what for you do you think is a good learning experience?
A good
How would you
learning
think of a good
experience.
learning experience?
Oh, good question. Well, if I can have a learning experience that is positive during the learning experience, wouldn't that be lovely? Sometimes we have learning experiences as
and how does it help? How do you understand what a positive learning experience is? What are the components of that?
Oh dear, I didn't know this was going to be a test. Now you're going to give me anxiety. Okay, so let's see. Sometimes I don't know that I'm having a learning experience until afterwards when I look backwards. We live forward and then we learn by looking backward. So I'm not sure specifically what the components are. I have never analyzed that. Would you teach me?
So I would say, if I can answer my own question, is that a positive learning experience is where you feel safe. You have someone that won't judge you, someone that can guide you, someone that can support you in that process.
So we're not just talking about an experience that teaches me. You're talking about a coaching experience that teaches me. And to me, I have to distinguish just a teeny bit because we also learn from our experiences. But I have to agree with you 100% that if I am going to ask someone to teach me, I want all those components. I want to feel safe. I want to feel like I am not judged. I want to feel like I am, that I'm okay where I am and that they can pull me up from there. So yes, thank you. Now that you've made that distinction, I think I'm on board with you. Keep going.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't clear on the whether it's a self-directed learning experience or a teaching, let's say, a teaching, coaching, mentoring, counseling type of experience. So if we go back to maths and we say, okay, well, I never liked maths at school. What does that say? Well, that's saying to me that I never felt safe in the maths classroom. What it's telling me is that the way I learn didn't gel with the way that the maths was taught. Maybe and so when I start to feel unsafe in the context of learning, then I start to disengage.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to stick my hand up in case I look like an idiot, or I'm going to stick my hand up in case the other guys laugh at me or the teacher throws something at me. I'm just going to disengage. And that learning experience becomes negative. So, and we disengage from subjects. We disengage from things that make us feel bad about ourselves.
Absolutely.
So if your experience with money is not positive. You disengage from that. You stay away from it. You go, I'm not thinking about that. That's going to make me feel bad about myself, about my situation, about the things I did and the things I didn't do. And we retreat into this space of shame and guilt and denial. And it's really hard to break out of that. So I guess kind of to circle back to my question around, how do I learn? How do I feel safe learning? What is a positive learning experience? It's where somebody supports me, doesn't judge me, and guides me and corrects me. And we all know what that feels like when we've had positive teachers, either at school or in church or, in other areas of life, where someone just accepted you for who you were, where you were, and said, okay, let's move forward at whatever pace that we can. And we don't have that around money.
No. Most financial analysts are very intimidating. And it's
sure, even the financial services industry is not orientated around that process of helping people engage with what could be a really scary process for them. And some of the worst practices, of course, of selling stuff to clients, as we all know, it's all documented. So, in fact, a lot of the business models of the financial services industries are about selling things to people. Even when it's all about selling things to people, but even the kind of planning process is about numbers. Let's plug a number into my life cycle. Cash flow generator. How much money do you need at 60, or how much money do you have now? Let's plug it into the machine.
Yes.
Let's see how it goes. Right.
All about math.
Right. It comes back to numbers. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can talk about goals. We can talk about lifestyle and everything, but actually, I think where you start with money when you engage with an individual, or you start with something, is what scares you about this? How do I make you feel safe? When you're sitting with me, how do I make you feel safe so you can talk to me about things that scare you? And then we're not prisoners of the things that scare us anymore.
This idea is revolutionary. Dennis, this is amazing. I have never heard anyone approach finances from that direction. And I think that is the way that it should be approached. It is eye-opening. It is amazing. And what a benefit that would be to, I can't think of a single person that wouldn't benefit.
Sure. Yeah.
That's incredible. So with this in mind, I mean, how would a parent teach a child? If it's okay to talk about money, if it's okay to open this dialogue, and it's something that isn't taught, what could we do to kind of help ourselves and to also help the next generation?
I'm so glad you raised that, because a lot of people get kind of fixated on the financial literacy piece, which is kind of okay, but it's necessary. But teaching a 16-year-old to budget ain't going to work. The time you really need to know and understand about a mortgage is just before you get one, not when you're 18. So a lot of stuff, a lot of concepts where they are taught don't really gel with where the individual is at that point in life. So as we've kind of intimated, money scripts, money beliefs, money views get handed down from generation to generation through this concept of your subconscious inheritance, along with your other views, as I said, about how siblings behave, how people sit at the table, how people talk at the table. All of that stuff comes out of your childhood. So it's critical to help parents understand how they can break the negative cycle and produce a positive cycle that their children can go, my parents were really good around money and they taught me everything I know, and I'm going to do that for my kids. So I just wanted to preface it with that, because so much is focused on kind of the school aspect of what can schools do and what's the numeracy aspect, whereas in fact everything that we learn about everything practically starts in the family home. So I have a talk that I do on how to teach children about money. In fact, I've done a whole bunch of sessions on it on LinkedIn, You can look me up on LinkedIn, and they're all recorded. I did 5 sessions of LinkedIn Live, 5 hours with another money coach and a guy that does financial education for children and parents. So there's 5 hours of resources out there, and I'm going to summarize what I think are the key points for parents. The first thing is, and the most important thing, is to understand what your own behavior is messaging to your children.
Wow. Accountability first thing.
Yeah, well, I think awareness and then accountability.
Right.
You have to start with awareness. Because if everything that you do and the way you behave is interpreted by the child's brain, which is building rules for the future. If this happens, that happens. If, when the credit card bill comes, there's a fight, okay? Or when, when, I'm trying to think of anything, when we go out to shop, mommy and daddy have a fight about how much one of them is spending or not spending. It can be both ways. All those messages, everything that you do, if you go into Target and you go, just give me the biggest TV there is, your kids will understand that, and they will consider that to be the normal behavior. And I say all this with no judgment, right? I come from a place of compassion, because a lot of this stuff, as I said, you never consciously chose to do. These are just learned behaviors. So the first thing is understand your messaging. If you're telling kids you don't want to talk about money, then they will have problems with money for the rest of their lives, right? It is something we need to talk about. It's something we need to understand. Our children's lives are precarious. 40, 50 years ago, you could get a job and you could pay into whatever pension schemes you have, employer pension schemes, 401ks, and you were taken care of for life. This does not exist anymore. Life is very precarious, and you need to understand that positive behaviors like saving need to be taught, and they need to be demonstrated, and they need to be supported. So understand your own behavior and watch the messages you're sending. The second thing is around developing a work ethic. If you want your children to develop a work ethic, then you also need to model it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be done for the family. And if your partner says to you, can you take the trash out or walk the dog? And you go, never mind, I can't be bothered with that. You are messaging to your children that your chores aren't worth doing. So chores are important because they build a work ethic. And I think that there's a whole bunch of stuff that is important for important parts of the family to make the family run. So maybe walking the dog, maybe taking the trash out, maybe unstacking the dishwasher or putting the dishes away. And you can extend that as much as you want. These are all core parts of being a family and contributing to being a family. And so everybody involved needs to do it with good grace, without pulling faces and without shirking, because if you do that as an adult, your children will copy you. If they go, it's only your mother, don't worry about it, they will copy you. They'll take whichever side is going to be easier for them, and they won't build that work ethic. Now, there are certain things that you may pay other people to do, and you can pay your kids to do that. So maybe they're bigger things, I don't know, like cutting the lawn or washing the car or stuff like that. I don't think you should pay children money for doing things that are core family chores, but you can pay them for other stuff. And they're going to have to learn to do that stuff at their own pace. It's easy for you to understand. I've been washing cars for years, right? Your kids are not going to learn to wash the car very well, and you don't want to undermine them. You want to give them agency. You want to give them feelings of progress. So it's really difficult as parents. We always worry about, we try and stop our kids making bad decisions. We try and stop them hurting themselves. We try and stop them doing all this stuff. And we don't want them to buy crap off the internet. We don't want them to do this. And so we try and stop them from doing that. And so that, two problems with that. One is they don't learn. And secondly, it kind of undermines their own decision-making process. And if they feel like they don't make good decisions, that stays with them for life. So let them, help them, let them, show them. So we talked about kind of modeling reflective behavior, having discussions. You can talk about kind of things like, it depends on your kid's age, but you want to show that they've got different alternatives. So you can talk about stuff about, for example, the Midas touch. Well, do you think that would be good? Do you think that would be bad? It'd be great if everyone turned to gold, maybe. So there's some parables and some fables and stuff that you can explore with children to show them that there are, alternative ways of looking at things, and just be kind of open to discussion. And then I think there's this concept of reflective decision making, which is, we want to buy a new car, we want to buy a TV, we want to buy a computer. How do we go about that process? If you want your kids to make reasoned, thoughtful decisions, you have to model that process yourself. So I love the concept of buying a new car, right? Now, your kids don't know anything about cars necessarily, but you can get them to do the research. What do we need to know? Well, how many seats does it have? What color do we want it? What size do we want it? What are we going to do with it? And you get your kids to do the research, you get them in the process, and you show them how to make a considered, thoughtful decision and take them through that process. The fourth one is about allowances. So I think that giving children allowances is the best financial literacy tool there is. And people get confused around this. They go, am I going to give them money? What for what? I'll pay them to do things, but I'm not going to give them money. How do most people learn? You learn from experience.
You got to try it.
So if you want kids to learn about making decisions with money, about trade-offs, and understanding about what happens if you spend all your money on day one of the week, you have to give them money. But you're going to give them money that replaces money you would have spent on them anyway. So you can take a month's worth of expenses, and depending on the age of the kid, you can say, right, I'm not going to buy you candies anymore. Here is $5 to go and buy your own candies. I'm not going to buy you candies anymore. Here's your $5. Now, the important thing to do with that is make sure they save 20% of it, and then you can build a savings habit. And you say, okay, here's 4 $1 coins, and the fifth dollar is an amount to save. And then depending on the age, you either set up a bank account, but you give them a saving thing, and you explain why they're going to save it, and then you reward the saving. Because bank accounts don't pay any interest, piggy banks don't pay any interest. So then you start a process of like, if you can save $10, I'll give you $1 extra.
Oh,
and you show that saving can be a rewarding process, because what you need them to do to build kind of long-term stability is to save over their lives and put it away and let the stock market build their wealth for them. The other thing that you're teaching them is that when you have, $4 or whatever that thing is, you can make your own decisions and you live with the consequences. You can't do that when you're 18. They can't send, or 19 and send them to college and go, right, now you need to learn about budgeting. They have to have had that lived experience through their youth to make the mistakes that they're going to make and go, maybe that wasn't so great. So my kids have all had an allowance for things that they wanted to do. And they've used some of that allowance to buy like $40 drones off the internet. Well, they only did it once because it was a piece of rubbish. Okay. How can I teach them that? I can't say don't buy a $40 drone off the internet, it's rubbish, because they probably wouldn't believe me. And if I did, I'm just setting them up to make a bigger mistake later on in life.
Exactly. The consequences that are small are the place to learn before it gets to be a big problem.
Right.
Brilliant.
And then you can support them in that. You can go, how did that drone work out for you? Okay, what are the learnings here? Not judgmental. Not like I told you so. It's really hard to learn something when someone's saying, I told you so.
Right.
You were right. I was right and you were wrong all alone. So that comes back to, don't undermine their decisions. Just look at that as part of the learning process. And then have open money conversations. So when your kid comes home and goes, how much money do we have in the bank? Or what's our house worth? Or what does daddy earn? Or what does mummy earn? Or whatever. And you're going, ooh, right? What have I just done there? Well, I'm going, what's my message?
Stress. Don't talk about it. This is terrible. This is bad. Be afraid.
Right. So these are questions that are normal to ask, right? Kids, we want our kids to be curious. We want them to know things. We can't go, oh, you could ask anything.
Except A, B, C, D, E.
Except anything to do with money or savings or anything like that. So the answer to that question is always, that's a really interesting question. What made you ask that?
Ooh, thank you. That gives a quick answer. Okay.
Every time. That's a really interesting question. What made you ask that? So there's two things here that are really important. One is we want to reward kids for asking questions. School teaches them that the smart guy is the one with the answer. The guy with the questions is the guy that hasn't got it, or the one that's going to keep the school. So school rewards people. They don't reward them for being curious and asking questions. Not really, right? So asking questions is important, and it's brilliant, and it's natural. So ask questions, and ask questions about money as well. That's also okay. It's okay to ask questions about money. And then the second thing is get some context. So if the kids have just had a financial literacy lesson, it's reasonable to ask that question. If one of your kids, their dad has just lost their work and they're worried about money, again, it's a reasonable question to ask. So if you're shutting the question down by going, oh no, we don't talk about that, or I'll talk about it later, or not in front of not in front of your sister, whatever. What your messaging is that it's bad to talk about money. And it isn't.
You're reminding that the core is to talk about that compassion and also the relationship. And the where are you coming from, rather than having it go straight back to the numbers. That's really smart.
Yeah, and get the context for it, and then go, okay. So again, people are uncomfortable with saying how much they earn, and that may be because of judgment, maybe also because they might actually be bad with money, and that it's challenging for them. So I get that. It's not easy. No one likes to go, I'm this, right? So part of getting context is understanding what it exactly is the child wants to ask. So if you are comfortable saying, I earn, whatever, $60,000 a year, but out of that I have to pay taxes. I have to pay, the local taxes, the state taxes, and you go through a whole list of things. You don't have to baffle them with numbers, but you can take this as an opportunity to go, you think that's a huge amount of money, but actually when I go through it amongst all the taxes I have to pay, and then this is what it costs us to run the house, and you can then turn that into a much broader discussion around money and the uses of money. So it's a learning opportunity to do that.
You have transformed it from a moment of terror into this beautiful learning opportunity with that one question. That was beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful. That's a really interesting question. It's a really great question. Why did you ask that? What prompted that? Where did that come from?
Oh, that is so excellent. And that makes a person feel safe to ask a question.
Yeah.
And that allows parents to be able to continue to teach, rather than shutting themselves off from their children as a mentor and as a coach for life.
I love that you've picked up on that. Never quite realized that connection between the safety. Because if you don't feel safe, you don't feel safe to ask questions. And then people will go, I'm not going to get shouted at if I ask about money. Then I'm going to,
don't do that.
Money thing, right? I'm not going to go near it, right? And then I'm not going to ask my friends, and I'm not going to know because it's always produced a bad reaction when I've had to do it before. Obviously, you have to pick your moments, right? Don't go in the middle of a family row and do this. But we want to reward our children for being curious, for asking questions, for being interested. And what gets in the way is our own fear.
It always starts with us, where our feelings are about money, and all of our feelings just about ourselves.
Right. And it's okay. It's okay. So if you don't know the answer, let's talk about, I saw something about Reddit on the internet memes. Can you explain this to me? It's okay not to know. because then you can start on a journey together. You can say, I don't know, I've heard about this. Why don't we go and look it up after supper? Let's get on the internet and see if we can get some information. You can start that financial literacy journey, that discovery journey together, which is also a really nice experience. But you have to start with being okay not to know and not dismissive either. And go, that's really interesting. Why don't we talk about that later? Or why don't we explore that together? I don't know the answer to that.
And
that's
that
a really
again
great question.
Goes around the circle in giving compassion to yourself and to others. That's brilliant. I hadn't even thought about how important compassion is in our money management until today. I feel enlightened, Dennis. Thank you. And
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining with me today. This has been an amazing conversation, and I've loved it.
That's so kind of you. Thank you. I'm so pleased. And this is not like a kind of, magic money candle. It doesn't change.
No, you still have to change your behavior. You still have to learn self-discipline. You still have to make good choices. But at least it puts you in a place that where you are now, it's not failure. It's not the end. It's here's why, here's where. Okay, now we can move forward, and it's going to be okay.
Sure.
It gives hope that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I can make it okay. I can claim my power back. I can change, and I can do things because none of this stuff is who I am.
Right.
None of this stuff is cast in stone. These are stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we need, what we can't do, and as you know. So pleased that it's resonated with.
To my heart, to my core. It was amazing. It was incredible. It's just such a different angle than I have ever heard before. And I love it. And I love that money is not who we are, and it doesn't have to be scary.
No, it's unfortunate that our society gives almost the opposite message at every single available opportunity. That just entraps people in debt and shame.
Exactly.
Debt, because they feel that you're not good enough if you don't buy this, drive this, wear this. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I don't know why we buy into it. I don't feel that way, but I know many people who do. And it becomes a cage where I liked your idea that it gives you your power back. That when we feel like we're powerful. Sometimes we think we have to have a lot of money in order to be powerful, but it's really not. It doesn't have to do with the amount. It's not about the numbers. It's about the attitude and about where we're at.
Yeah, as long as I have enough money to feed myself and my family and buy the basics of life.
And live indoors. I like my house, so.
And live indoors, with toilet indoors as well. Yeah.
Love toilets. That's a good thing.
And with some internet connection, because that's unfortunately, that is how the world is wired.
Isn't that funny? That's right with you. I need food, clothing, shelter, and internet. I got to get the basics.
So internet is now a core security need of life.
It is.
But what it means is I can talk to you, so I'm all in favor of that.
It is. It shrinks the world, and it brings wonderful access. So, good stuff. What a pleasure. Well, thank you.
Thank you for accepting my invite. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Linda.
So glad I did. Thank you. I feel like a better person because I talked to you. So.
Oh, you're killing me. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
So pleased. So I noticed that you normally finish with a quote. So
I do. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's great. Can I give you a quote?
You want to give the quote. All right.
Well, you can give a quote as well. But,
you go first.
So, it's one of the things that is kind of one of the things in the thought process is how do I move from self-criticism to self-compassion, which I think is and something else I want to leave you is like the less emotional we are about money when our kids are growing up, the more rational they will be with their money. So have you heard of a guy called Peter Crone?
Peter Crone. It's not popping in my head. Tell me, remind me.
So he has a really interesting quote. It says, "Life will present you with people and situations that will show you where you're not free." And this comes right back to what you were saying with Christian and the other week. accept yourself as who you are, where you are, and simultaneously get clear on what it is you're dedicated to creating beyond that.
That is fantastic. Now I got to say that I like your quote better than the one that I prepared, but I'm going to share it anyway. So, in closing, I'd like to share a quote by Laurene Powell Jobs, a businesswoman, philanthropist, billionaire, and widow of Steve Jobs. She said, "My relationship with money is that it is a tool to be self-sufficient, but it's not something that is a part of who I am." Today, I invite you to examine your relationship with money and see if perhaps you need to make up and decide to be friends. See you next time on Linda's Corner.